Welcome, everybody. My name is Steve Drost. With me, as always, Will Kaplan. Of course, Will and I are both from the Quivr team, and welcome to another user spotlight. Today is a little bit different. We're going across the border. We're entering a little bit north. With us today, we have Ben Zavitz. Ben is, I don't think he's our only Canadian user, but he's definitely the one we know the best. And he was also the first one. So he was the guy that got to teach me what a social insurance number is, or get Ben, you have to tell me, what do you guys call zip codes up there again?
Postal codes.
Postal codes. There we go.
More British.
Yeah. No, but Ben, thank you, Ben, for coming today. I'm very excited to get into what you're doing that is very unique on the Quivr platform. And the cool thing about what you're doing is it's actually not a specific item, but I would say you kind of have a specific theme when it comes to the unique items that you're doing in Quivr. But without further ado, I'd love, Ben, you give us a quick background, tell us who you are, and what you do for your clients.
Yeah. So, hi, everyone. Thanks for having me here. I run a single person firm financial planning. And what we do also is we do mortgages for clients, life and health insurance for clients, and we do investments for clients through a referral with a portfolio manager. I think it's similar to your RIA model. And I also happen to do group benefits and both group health and retirement benefits too for more small, medium-sized businesses. So as a single person team with no admin, it tends to be quite administratively heavy currently.
No, yeah, and obviously quick differences there to our listeners. I don't know very many of our users that are doing mortgages, that are doing group health benefits, right? That's not something that your typical RIA is doing in the States. So definitely, Ben, it's pretty cool how you're able to tinker with Quivr to help it do what you want to do. But I'd love to hear, like, maybe what features in Quivr are you doing the tinkering, and how are you making Quivr match what you want it to do?
Yeah. So I would say initially right out of the gate, it was projects. Everything is a project for me. You've got a mortgage renewal coming in. You've got a mortgage purchase coming in. Investments, including the transfers, making sure there's PAC setups, which I mean, just ongoing contributions, and then just life insurance as well. You know, when does it go to underwriting? Is one of the policies stuck in underwriting, all the other ones out of it? It's just because the big thing for me is because I can centralize all the client communications within the project itself. If I ever have a regulator come back and ask me questions, it's already separated into which regulator. Is it the life and health insurance regulator? Is it the investment regulator? Is it the mortgage regulator? Because up here in Canada, everything has to be regulated. We love regulators regulating the other regulators. That being said, that's where I found projects. I've spent the most amount of my time on projects because that is the item that I find with clients. If we ever need to reference something, that's the first place I need to check.
I love it. So projects, I think, are one of our more underutilized features inside of Quivr. And it might be because, again, most of our firms are in the States and they're RIAs, most of them, not all. Maybe the rest of the Quivr functionality might hit the things that they need. But you're right, a mortgage, where would that live? Obviously, it could be a liability in the assets and liabilities module, but that's not going to help you track the process, the document retention, all of that good stuff. So it's really cool. Like, maybe, Will, you can kind of talk about this. I know we have a handful, maybe a dozen or two of users that do tax planning, and I know they've built out projects, and it sounds like how they're building out tax planning projects is maybe comparable to how Ben is building out the mortgage and the life insurance projects.
It's such a weird thing because, like, if you go back, oh man, this can be embarrassing for me. If you go back like 20 or 30 years, where a lot of these RIA firms in the States were, you'd have a file room and you'd go into the file room and you'd pull out the hanging folder. And for Quivr, that's like the household. And then inside of that, you'd find all these manila folders, and each manila folder is exactly what Ben is talking about. It's like, here's everything I need related to this particular bit of work. And then as we started to sort of enter the digital era, where we're getting away from, saving every last scrap of paper that we ever lay our eyes on, we sort of forgot how to do this. And so I think we're now kind of coming full circle where there are a lot of CRMs that don't have this ability to sort of push everything together that is related to, like in Ben's case, this is everything that I need for a mortgage, everything I need for this particular insurance policy. And it like blows my mind. I mean, Ben was describing all of these regulators coming in from various different organizations because he's doing different types of work. I was like, oh my God, that poor man. But thank goodness you have some way to organize all that data. And you're right, Steve. I mean, to the point of we have a handful of users that are either doing something like tax planning or doing something like tax prep or doing something, really unique, even in the States. Like, we've got one company that is doing some really unique kind of a combination of an insurance policy with a privately funded bond. And they're able to take something that we've created in this project and really customize it and make it unique for the needs of their particular business. And this is, Ben's a great example because he's done that, I think, in spades, and he's done a really good job of that.
Oh, thank you.
But yeah, like it's funny to me how we've kind of like, we started doing this and then we kind of forgot about it. And now we're starting to see it come back because it's just, you need that ability to say like, I want to see everything related to just this one particular thing.
Yeah. And it's great because on the project side, let's say mortgages, for example, I'm building it out. So if and when I do get an admin assistant, I don't expect them to be coming in with the knowledge. So is it a purchase? Is it a refinance? Is it just, and unlike mortgages in the States where you're locked in for 25 years, in Canada, most people have a 3-year or 5-year fixed term renewal, or they go variable, but it's still 3 or 5 year fixed, 3 or 5 years in length. So the idea being, I go into the back end of projects and I say, based with the field like engagement type, for example, if it's a purchase, then it's displaying everything conditionally visible that has a purchase related to it. So I don't have the admin assistant looking at fields that would be only used for a refinance or a term switch if it's a purchase, because we need to know, what's the down payment amount? That's not applicable to any other part. So that's where I really think Salesforce does well, that Quivr's built on is, when it takes a while of hitting your head against a wall to learn it, but that just means it's so customizable that it's just, sometimes I'll just throw ChatGPT on, take screenshots, say, I want to do this, this, and this, walk me through this, how to do it. And that's kind of how I'm right now figuring out kind of the harder items, I would say.
What you're doing is amazing, and I love how you're building everything for future you, because the whole point, and I know me and you we talk regularly, right? And especially over the years, we've talked a lot, and everything you're doing is so that, when revenue gets to a certain point, or when, time gets to a certain point, you're going to be able to bring in that individual to then delegate all of this. And I love how you're building everything for that next phase that you're in, because let's just think about it, right? What you're trying to do is have page layouts, right? So if you click in on a mortgage, you're trying to make it so that if it's a specific type of mortgage, refi, cash out refi, whatever you want to call it, it'll display certain fields. And maybe that's not the most important thing for you because you know what every field is, you know what everything you need. But by the time you bring that new person on, you want to be able to just click a button, say this is a refinance, display the pertinent information, give your individual instructions to then know what they need to do. It's almost like taking the task steps box that we have in our workflows and embedding that into the project. So that way, when it's time for you to hire that next individual or train that next individual, you don't have to deal with that. And Ben, what you're describing right now is probably building out those custom pages. I wouldn't say it's like an advanced feature or, maybe thing that you're doing, but it's also not remedial. Like that is quasi challenging. But this is a great example of something that if you want guidance with, you can come to office hours. And I know, Ben, you've come to office hours and, we talk, at least when you first got on Quivr, we talked quite a
Will
bit.
smiling on the bane of his existence when he sees me periodically pop in.
No, I mean, a little shout out to Ben. A lot of the more detailed fields, specifically in the modules, actually came from Ben. Ben was somebody who raised his hand and said, have you guys thought about all of these fields for a disability insurance policy? And the answer was no, we hadn't, because a lot of the Quivr functionality was built based upon my expertise and Will's expertise. But when we have users come on who maybe do things differently than us, or they do something more than us, I mean, we can put our egos aside and say, well, tell us what fields you need, right? The student loans process was one of those. A lot of the insurance came from Ben. So Ben, you helped make our product way better. So for that, we are absolutely grateful. But
That's
a
really
cool
nice way to say I'm needy. So thank you.
Well, we either built it once for everybody or you built it on your own. So no. Okay, so you're using projects heavily and you have those for maybe have you built a project for most of your service offerings for your clients?
Not yet. I'm right now just in the midst of building one out. It's under financial planning. I have it as its own project. Then under engagement type, is it a new plan or is it an existing plan, like an update more or less? And then from there, the idea is based on that one field alone, then that'll trigger an Archr workflow to then start down that rabbit hole. So I just have to write out my process because it seems to be I've got 50 processes to write out, and then honestly never look at them again, hopefully.
And to me, that's such an a lot of times during our prospect calls, and I think one of the differences between maybe some of the CRMs that are out there is with Salesforce, there's sort of an initial steady climb, right? You're learning the platform, you're adopting some of the ways that Salesforce organizes data, and you kind of have to learn. There's a period, to me, it seems like it's somewhere probably between 6 and 12 months, where you're making these like incremental gains of, I'm starting to figure it out, I'm starting to figure it out. And then all of a sudden it catches and you're like, oh, I understand page layouts and I understand Archr and I understand like how the household is on the top of the pyramid and everything rolls up to it. And then you kind of get this exponential, like that's where it takes off and the rocket launches. And you really get to move into kind of like that next phase of your Quivr understanding. And I think for a lot of our users and, especially prospective users that haven't, they don't have as much familiarity with the platform, there's this assumption that like you turn it on and it's perfect and like everything just works magically and it's all exactly the way that you want it. And in reality, that's not the case. I mean, Ben is a great example. He's been wrestling this thing for a while now, but I think you're getting to that point where you have the knowledge that you need, you're able to execute it. It's just a matter of like kind of running down the list and checking the boxes. Do I have all these processes in? Do I have all of these project types in? And it's a
Exactly. Yeah.
lot more just like repetitious as opposed to I have to go learn how to do all this different stuff and I have to go back to the Quivr community to figure out like, is there information about this in there? And if not, then it's on us to put it in there. But it takes some time. You have to kind of like, and it's iterative as well. You kind of do it once and then you realize like, well, that's not quite what I want. So I'm going to kind of like come in and give it a little more polish. But it's kind of a different model than a lot of what you run into out there in the CRM world, where a lot of these things are products. They're not necessarily a platform, where with Salesforce and the Quivr overlay, you can really take what we've provided, but you can go so far beyond that. And that I think you're probably the quintessential example of I'm going to go beyond what Quivr has built and really make this my own. And that it takes some time.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, just even being not having admin, it's just like, what am I doing the most? Like, what are the things that just sit in my head rent free that I know I need to do, but they're never the most important task? And something is like that would come up, let's say, is now I've got Zapier going. So like client and I are talking, their new prospect, they're happy with what I'm saying. I send them a letter of engagement. And then what happens is when they sign the letter of engagement, what happens is now it looks them up on DocuSign and then looks them up in Quivr and at the household level. And now all of a sudden they're added to the newsletter. All of a sudden they're added, like it's selected what kind of client agreement they've had, the last sign date, and then it's moved the date of signing also on under the contact object. So then I can start running a report once a year saying, show me someone who hasn't signed something in 2 years. Let's, send them a new one because we don't have ADBs where we are. It's a little more loose that way, where it's not as, is it every January?
Every spring. Yeah, first
Every
quarter's
spring.
ADB season.
Yeah.
I actually don't know the deadline date because I do it in February or January, but yeah.
I think it's
somewhere-
March. I think it's the end of March, maybe.
Is it?
Like the end of the first quarter, I think is when you're supposed to have those in.
Sounds right. That's cool though. So I think the theme, and Will, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the theme specifically with newer users on Quivr is they'll always say, I want automation, or what automations can you guys do? With that, it's like, well, we can't, Quivr and Salesforce can do most things, right? I mean, if there's a will, there's typically a way with Salesforce. But what I like that you said earlier was you have this long path. If this happens, if somebody schedules this, I want this to happen, then this to happen, then this to happen. And I know I say it all the time, and I know people are probably annoyed of it, but if you can whiteboard that, if you can literally on pen and paper or a dry erase marker and a whiteboard draw out what you want to have happen, you then have two options. You can either figure it out yourself, which is what you're doing for the most part. I know you've asked for help in a few places from us and then outsiders as well. Or if you have it drawn out, you can hire somebody on Upwork for a very de minimis amount of money to have your desired automation your way in the system. And you have been a really good example of I know we helped you with some, and then you hired somebody on Upwork, but then they gave you the framework and then you kind of reverse engineered that. And now
Zapier,
now you've been using what they built so that you kind of have this, I don't know, tell me if I'm wrong. You now have this thing where you can sort of wash, rinse, repeat, clone, edit, move on.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, a lot of it's the same thing. Like, hey, I got to look up a client in Quivr. I've got to find that household. I've got to then, and it's just from there, you see how they built it. And I mean, it was the best $650 USD I've ever spent. And that's an extra 35% here in Canada.
No, you got me thinking now. That's cool.
It's funny because, like, I mean, Ben, probably in about 4 years, you'll start your own CRM for Canadian advisors because, I mean, the process that you're describing is exactly how I got started. When I was trying to learn Salesforce, because I had a very specific use case, I wanted to do this, this, and this. I went out, hired a developer off of, I think maybe I was using Upwork as well. And I basically said, I would like to sit in and learn what you're doing while you do it. I'm happy to pay for the extra time because it's going to be slower, and I appreciate that because I'm ask a bunch of questions. But like that's how I started to gather the knowledge that you need in order to use this platform. And so, in some ways, I think that Quivr can be that shortcut to some of that knowledge. But like what you're doing is exactly the way that I started doing it as well. And it's just you have to kind of cobble enough knowledge together to make it useful. But then it is a lot of I take this particular tool and I plug it in here and it gives me this outcome. So then I grab this other tool. And I also think that one of the important things to remember for a lot of our users that are listening is you don't have to do all of it at once. You can take little bite-sized pieces of sign something in DocuSign and have it update a field in Quivr. And that's an automation. Like that's enough to get started. It doesn't have to go all the way down your process from like, they sign something to like something magical happens on the other end. It can be little small, like I'm just going to automate this little tiny piece of it. And then once you've got that solved, you've gotten a little bit more knowledge and then you can go tackle the next one. And sometimes like compartmentalizing that stuff is really helpful because if you know how to connect like DocuSign to Salesforce, then maybe Calendly to Salesforce or some of the other tools that we use, Precise FP or a Jot form or something like that, you start to learn kind of like, oh, I see like how these wheels are turning. I get it now. And then you can start applying that knowledge to other things.
And the biggest thing too is once you get there, it's nothing falls between the cracks. So like a lot of my items, let's say coming from like do a meeting in Zoom, Fathom records it, goes through Zapier, Fathom automatically puts it in the meeting module under meeting notes. And then at the end, and this is where kind of Will, what you were saying was I had it like that for a while, but then I was like, oh, I got to remember to go back and review the notes. So then you just add one more line item to that Zapier and you say, create a task tied to this meeting that just review meeting notes and then end it at that. And then even there, like thinking ahead in the comment section, I just say, this is an FYI, delete when done, because I don't need it after the initial reminder. So then the next person who takes over, then they know not to keep it.
So Ben, I love how you describe that. And I think the theme is kind of earlier as well, how the first time maybe you built the mortgage project, it wasn't perfect. And then, you made some
Far
improvements
from
to
it.
it. Yeah, right. I tell most people, for example, the onboarding module, it's kind of like a project, but it's not. And I typically tell people the first time you onboard a client, just write down every single thing that you do. When you're done onboarding them, take that and make the onboarding module. And then over the next 1 to 2 to 3 people that you onboard, you're going to make small tweaks to it. You forgot this, you forgot that, you did this without realizing it, right? Build that out. But after you onboard 2, 3, maybe 4 people, you should more or less be there. And what you just described was maybe you built your post-meeting flow or your post-meeting automation. And then the second or the third meeting, you realize, dang it, I forgot to review the notes. Let me just go add one extra thing. And that's actually quite simple. I know some of our users, I hope we're not overwhelming you with some of the words we're using, but what Ben's describing now, again, it's very, very doable. But I want to take one step back though, and kind of bring it back to what Will and you were saying, Ben. And one of those things was you simply can't do everything. You cannot, day one, you can't do everything. And I want to share a little bit of how I think about this. So when I was first getting onto Salesforce early in the Quivr days, I always wanted to look at what do I need next quarter? And that's how I decided what I was going to build that quarter. Because I knew I didn't have the time to build everything. I was maybe solo and admin if my mom was starting to work with me by then. But I knew I couldn't build everything. So if today is, November 10th or whatever day today is, I would say, what am I going to need Quivr to do for me next quarter? Am I doing a value add? Do I have surge coming up? Do I want to do an IPS review? What am I going to do? And then I would focus this quarter on building that. And then what I would find is I would then finish this quarter building what I need next quarter. And then inevitably I'm going to do that item. And what am I going to find? Just like you mentioned, Ben, you want an extra task made. You're going to find out that you already want your process to be different. I'm going to make those small tweaks. And then I'm not going to touch that again until it comes up again. And then the next time I do it, I'll follow that. I might make an update or two, and then I'll keep going. And if you just keep building something every quarter, in a year or 2 years or 3 years, you're going to be in a really good spot.
Yeah. Just incremental change in the right way. You get bored
how
for
are
20
you
minutes.
doing it? How do you decide what to do next?
Well, I'm just a dog chasing a car. It's, I've got So as I'm going through things, if I don't have time at that exact moment, I'll just add it as a task into Airtable. That's kind of where I've been keeping everything. And it's sorted based on, is it a Archr workflow? Is it something that just a new field I need to add to, let's say, an asset and liability record that works for my business. And if I don't have time, then it's all sorted. I come back to it later. But while I'm doing it, a lot of the time, I just, deviate for 15 minutes, do something with it, put it out there in the world, and then come back. But usually that's more of those are the smaller incremental things. Those aren't the, create a brand new object from scratch
Yeah. The
items.
incremental things, you kind of, yeah, you got to have a list of those somewhere.
Listening to you go, oh yeah, it's just, what do I need next quarter? I'm just sitting there thinking, I've never considered that. I probably should.
That's how I did it. And I still do it. I mean, maybe because I've been on the platform for so long, maybe I don't have a big item every quarter. Maybe I'm more so in the small items now. For example, one of my states just started requiring me to do the 12 hours of IAR. I have another state that already makes me do it. So when that email came in that said I had to do it, I just forwarded it to my mom, who's my admin, right? And I said, add a process in Archr. That's an automation, right? Kick that workflow off automatically, the same way Minnesota is set up. And I just got out of the way. And of course, when you have an admin, maybe some of those littler things will be able to get handled like that. But no, it was definitely the big things every quarter of what I needed to do, right? The surge next quarter was my ADV next quarter. What was next quarter? My big thing that I wanted to take care of. And then the little things, you're right, you handle them when you can. One thing I can say though, is as you've been on the system longer and longer, the littler things are fewer and farther between, and
For
they're
sure.
easier. What's that?
Oh, I said, yeah, for sure. It's a lot less heavy lifting every single time.
For sure. Ben, anything you want to share about the Quivr platform? The coolest thing you found? I don't know, anything at all.
I, you know what? It's one of those things where I originally started with a different Salesforce based one. Like we were talking, we moved over because I saw the vision where you guys were taking it, and I'm super happy with the direction it's going. The fact that even being in Canada, how usable it is for me. But like the thing is, in my mind, it's like I wanted 3 to 5 years from now have a client facing app that I can have, and I'll figure that out in the future. But it's one of those things that I'm confident I can build it on the platform we're already on. So that's kind of the thing that excites me. Like that's my right now, my only like long-term technical plan is like how long before I can get an app with single sign-on, let's say to the investment portfolios or whatever for the clients. But how long till I can get that out in the world? And I mean, I can only do that because, Archr and workflows and Zapier, like the back end processes are getting to the point where now I can start, what's it called? Seeing the forest from the tree. So yeah, outside
I'm
of that,
nervous to even say
honestly,
this, but Salesforce actually has a client portal. It's a feature that Quivr doesn't use heavily, but that's your 3 to 5 year. I don't see how that can't be possible by then, right? Because
yeah.
Salesforce already has the functionality. It's going to continuously get better. And then utilizing the connection tools that you just alluded to, I don't see how you can't do that.
And that's the thing. Like normally it's just, and I don't know how it is with you guys, but when I've got, mortgage from one company with a client, I've got a life insurance policy with another client, you're another, business. And then, we've got the investments elsewhere. It's nice to be able to pull it all into one for the client. So they're not just, having to log into 3 or 4 different portals. So
They're never going to do it. You need to give them one login at the most. Yeah, I'm a firm believer in that. No, that's awesome. Will, anything else you want to add?
No, I think Ben's doing really good work.
He's been a
Seems like
pleasure.
he's well on his way to figuring all this out and really customizing it for his business.
you guys are going to make me blush.
No. Well, Ben, thank you so much for joining us. For those of you that are listening that are Quivr users, if you have any questions about any of the features, functionality, automations, things that Ben's doing, shoot us an email, send us a ticket, show up to office hours. Because as much as what Ben is doing, I think is really cool. Like I don't just say that. Also, I don't think anything he's doing is specifically unique, right? Other users of Quivr are doing components of every single thing that he's doing, which is really cool. So if you have questions about any of that, come to office hours, shoot us some questions. We'll do everything we can to get you on that path. And if you're not a Quivr user, that's okay. Everybody makes mistakes and nobody is perfect. But that's all right. It's not too late. Schedule a demo. Come hang out with me. Come hang out with Will. And let's see what Quivr can do for you and for your practice.